Hey guys, Greg Connolly here with Trifecta with Dr. Mike Israetel from Renaissance Periodization. And today we've been going through different elements of the psychology of dieting and everything from convenience to social support groups. And one of the topics that we get a lot, both at Trifecta and at RP, is getting into a rut in your diet when you're falling off the wagon or you're struggling psychologically to keep with it, and some of the tactics you can do to really solve that problem. I think it's a problem that virtually, if not every single person in the United States and possibly globally has faced, whether they know it or not. So, would love to hear what you think about it, Mike, tactics people can use, etc.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So, first, let's talk about some of the signs. How do you know if you're in a rut? Generally speaking, they can start off small, and these signs are ever present when you're dieting and it's hard. When they get out of control is when you're really in a rut. Mm-hmm. So the signs are your metabolism starts to slow down incredibly because you've been dieting too hard or for too long or some combination of the two. You start to get cold a lot. Maybe even your thyroid production goes down. You start to experience really crazy hunger cravings, and you start obsessing about food. It's all about that next cheat meal. It's all about that next meal. You start having weird relationships with your body when you've been on the diet well, and you think that you've been good, and when you've cheated or whatever off plan, you're bad, and you really start to just feel terrible at the kind of person you are because you haven't been on your diet. And that can spiral into really, really nasty feelings.
Beating yourself up. Yeah.
Totally. And that can cause a lot of just psychological fatigue. And the entire idea behind dieting, behind restriction, behind control, behind the hunger, behind the goals with no boundaries, with no endings, it starts to weigh on you more and more and more. And at some point you start to grow an anxiety about dieting that gets completely out of control. Mm-hmm. Looking at food and value judging it, counting every little bit, knowing that every little bit of counted food that you're eating is one step closer to food that you no longer get that day. Seeing food as good or bad and how it reflects on your body and thinking, I'm going to eat this fat and it's going to go right to my fat and it's going to make me uglier and worse and all that stuff. It's really bad stuff.
Oh yeah. People beat themselves up, myself included. Yeah.
Sure. And when that kind of stuff gets completely out of hand, you know that you're burnt out on the process of dieting itself. When you've attempted multiple diets and you failed at them, you start cheating uncontrollably, you fall off, you can't do it anymore. The entire process of dieting caused you such psychological distress that you can't do it. Then you're burnt out, by definition, because you can't do it anymore. So where do we go from here? Before that happens, a great way to prevent diet burnout is to take maintenance phases. Mm-hmm. Don't diet too hard or for too long. Really quick definitions. Too hard is faster than 1% weight loss of your body per week on average. Mm-hmm. So if you weigh 300 pounds, if you're losing more than 3 pounds a week on average for an extended period of time, that's usually too fast. It can increase the risk of diet burnout. Too long is usually longer than about 12 weeks, we say. For some people, that's really individual. Some people longer than 8 weeks and they're already starting to burn out. Mm-hmm. But longer than 12 weeks applies to most. Most people, longer than 12-week diet is not a good idea. For competitive contest bodybuilders, it's fine. 16 is the standard. For most people, 12 is, anything above 12 starts to really, really get at you. So in order to prevent most forms of burnout, what you can do is diet at 1% or so, maybe even slower, of weight per week, and don't diet for any more than 12 weeks at a time. After that, whatever weight you get down to, take at least 2/3 of the time that it took you to diet. Maybe for some people who really struggle with dieting, take the same amount of time to maintain your lost body weight. Don't try to gain, don't try to lose, just eat in whatever way that makes the scale relatively stable. You'll gain like 3 to 5 pounds from water weight right after, and then it'll just stay there. So let's say you've gotten from 150 pounds down to 130 pounds over the course of 12 weeks or something. Mm-hmm. Then you stay at about 132 to 135 for at least 2 months. We'd even recommend 3 in many cases if you really struggle with diet fatigue, if diet's still bringing you anxiety. That maintenance phase will really relax everything. It relaxes the physiology. You start to eat normal food again. You start to eat a lot of food. You forget kind of what it feels like to really be hungry. You forget the idea and the psychological kind of weight of restriction. And you can really refresh, and usually you can just diet again right after and be okay. That doesn't always work like that. Sometimes people get themselves into trouble, most times, with burnout from diet when they don't do those maintenance phases. They'll do like, we talk to a lot of people at Renaissance. We're like, how long have you been on a diet? And they're like, my whole life. And I'm like, that's not good.
Stay cutting forever.
Totally.
No, I completely
attempted cutting forever. Right?
Yeah.
And that can wear down on you. And another way is maybe you took the maintenance phases and you just happen to be susceptible. And even with maintenance phases, some people still get diet burnout. Very rare. But for most people, they just don't have the technical background to even know that they're supposed to be taking maintenance phases, and they just try diet after diet after diet, cut after cut after cut, some success, some failure, and they end up back more or less in the same place. Or they've even made great gains, but now they can't do it anymore. Mm-hmm. So we'll see people who went all the way from 160 pounds over the course of several years down to 120 with some success and failure, and at 120 they just can't diet anymore. They want to weigh 110. Maybe it's fine for their frame. Maybe it's even healthy. They can't diet anymore. They just have had enough. So the question is, what do they do about it? So myself and Dr. Jen Case and Dr. Melissa Davis, we wrote the Renaissance Woman diet book, and in there we have some psychology tidbits. And one of them was the diet reset process. It's an invention of ours. Invention sounds much fancier, really. It's a discovery of what works. The diet reset process is not for everyone. It's just for people who are burned out on dieting. When I tell you what is involved, you're going to be like, oh man, you'd really save that for when it's real trouble. If you do not do the diet reset process when you need to, however, you're risking the development of actual diagnosable eating disorder. Mm-hmm. And most eating disorders, if not all, are characterized fundamentally by a gigantic anxiety towards body and food. Anorexics, bulimics, they are not people at peace. They are incredibly anxious individuals. Mm-hmm. Every bit of food, every bit of body fat, every bit of everything makes them super duper anxious. So how do we get away from that anxiety? How do we reduce it before it potentially funnels into something much larger like an eating disorder? Now it's a big public service announcement. If you have a diagnosed eating disorder, the diet reset does not work. Mm-hmm. It's not that powerful. If you're really mentally messed up from dieting, but you have a history not of eating disorder, but you're feeling like you're exhibiting a lot of disordered eating patterns, mm-hmm. maybe it's time to consider the diet reset. Here's what it is. It's a 4-stage process. Stage number 1 is the scariest stage of them all. It is also the most necessary. Stage number 1 is you abandon all restriction. What did he just say? You're at a point where you've accumulated so much diet fatigue that no actual restricted diet will get rid of it. You are so anxious that the very idea of rules is what's making you anxious. Mm-hmm. You have to step away from rules and come to them anew at some point later. Mm-hmm. The only way to do that is to eat exactly when you want it. Interesting. For several weeks. It could take several months. Now, you're watching this video, hopefully, and probably you train with weights and you do lots of cardio and whatever. Keep working out hard. It's great. You're not burned out on working out. You're just burned out on dieting. You'll build a lot of muscle with this plan if you continue to eat well and or eat plenty and work out a lot. So that's great. It's a lot of benefits. Don't weigh yourself. Do not control your intake at all. Eat whatever you want. And in some sense, you'll quote unquote get that out of your system. It's not so much getting it out of your system, it's becoming psychologically as full as you are physiologically. After you've had a bunch of cheat meals, if all the meals are cheat meals, they're not special anymore. Mm-hmm. You don't crave anything because you've eaten everything you crave. And then you will feel finally, how do you know when in the Renaissance Woman book, we wrote a couple more technical ways to know when you're done with this phase, but the real fundamental way you know is you're ready to clean it up. Mm-hmm. You're not like, okay, I should be ready to clean it up. You literally feel like, I'm tired of eating junk. I don't want to eat junk anymore. I want some every now and again, but I'm tired. I'm ready to go back to eating like an adult. I mean, that's how kids eat, right? Mm-hmm. Chicken nuggets, hot dog, whatever. And the first couple of days, and I promise you no one makes it past a couple of days eating like this, for the first couple of days, you're going to eat pure crap, only pure crap. After a couple of days, you're going to start to eat like chicken and broccoli a little bit here and there. Maybe every other meal, because you're going to be like, I don't know who can eat junk food all the time. It's not sustainable, totally. It doesn't taste good after it starts making you feel weird. Mm-hmm. So after a couple of weeks, even if it takes a couple of months, you're going to feel fundamentally like you're ready for some structure. The next phase is when you take no measuring, no counting, no scale. There is no scale. You're not weighing in. And you start to eat mostly a healthy diet. So The only restriction is that for most meals of the day or most meals of the week, you eat lean proteins, fruits, veggies, whole grains, and healthy fats. So yeah, McDonald's or whatever, pizza's cool every now and again, but most of your meals are going to be healthy. Automatically, a bunch of that weight you may have gained through the initial diet reset for phase 1 is going to start coming off, because you can't maintain a weight that you gained on tacos clean eating. That's pretty much impossible. Broccoli's not going to give you that kind of caloric yield. After a couple of weeks or a couple of months, and it's all a personal journey for how long it takes you, you may find yourself in a position that you're ready to go to the next phase. The next phase, you don't measure anything formally, you don't count anything formally, you're still not stepping on the scale, but you start to control your portions. You start to get a standardized portion, okay? Your meals come back. You're not just eating whatever, whenever, because even with the healthy food stuff, you're eating whenever. You go back to eating maybe 4 or 6 meals a day or whatever you were eating, maybe you have some programmed snacks, and you standardize your portions. Now you're eating portions that are, you fill up a plate or a plate and a half for meals, and if you're hungry, you eat more, and if you're not, you eat less, but you kind of, whatever food you take, that's what you eat. And you're okay with that. So your mind, in an intimate sense, you don't even remember what it's like to be really restricted, So that's kind of the first restriction you see now. It's like, okay, I'm eating healthy and I'm controlling my portions, but there's no goal for portion control. It's just being mindful about the size of your plate, what you pick, eat what you take, and if you're not super hungry after, just quit right there, and that's standard meals, right? Some kind of structure. After that feels completely okay and natural, which is only personal journey can decide, you go on to actually counting the macronutrients in your food with programmed meals, and then you can choose to start weighing in. It's going to be a scary weigh-in the first time maybe, but I guarantee that in most cases it won't be nearly as scary as you think. And you start weighing in, and now you are programmed to eat a certain amount of stuff, but it's maintenance diet. So you're programmed for maintenance. Get your macros in, your meals split exactly to maintain your weight, and then for a couple of weeks or months, whatever it takes for you to not feel anxious, just run that maintenance programmed diet. Then you graduate completely through the course. The last stage, which really isn't a stage at all, is you start alteration to that diet. You go back into a cutting phase or a fat loss phase. And then you start to subtract away fats or whatever you do to lower your calories, and you start to watch the scale to make sure that the scale goes down, and now you're running a full-fledged diet again. But by going all the way back to the beginning of completely unrestricted eating and slowly introducing elements of it, you have given yourself a chance to take a break altogether from that very, very, very psychologically painful process at that point, anxious process of restricting your food intake, and you can come back anew. Dr. Davis has had a couple of clients go through this diet reset. She had one client in particular who had reported that she was literally, when Melissa told her that maybe she should do a maintenance phase instead of a fat loss phase, because first we suggest a maintenance phase before we do a diet reset. This client began literally having fits of crying multiple times a day through that whole week. She would start crying because you imagine
just beating herself.
Imagine the wave of anxiety that was hitting her, the huge anvil of anxiety that sat on her that entire time. The idea that you're even going to back away from fat loss causes you to begin crying, and that's sad. That's crazy. So for her, she went through this whole diet reset process. She came back eating so much more food than she was before that Mel had to readjust her food intake up and up and up over the course of several weeks that the woman stopped losing weight on maintenance. And then when she went back to cutting, she just lost a ton of weight, like just easy, no problem. And all the psychological stuff, almost all of it had gone away, and this woman was going through the diet like nothing ever happened because she got a chance to step away and clean the slate. Does this heal eating disorders? Absolutely not. If you have a diagnosed eating disorder, if you think you do, a psychiatrist is the only person that can help you in conjunction with a dietitian and a medical doctor. However, if you think you've got some nasty eating habits and you're just done with dieting, consider the diet reset. And I'll tell you this, it's got to come from a personal decision, because a lot of people think, oh my God, you're going to let me eat whatever the hell I want? That's crazy. If that seems crazy to you, you're not anxious enough yet. But you'll know when you're so anxious that you don't want to fucking deal with it anymore. You've had enough. It's kind of like, I don't know, it's a really morose analogy, but it's kind of like a divorce. You know when it's over. It's just like he hits the teacup on the table like he usually does, and you're like, that was the last time I've ever hearing that sound. Right? And you're out. Just the same way, you had enough anxiety from the diet, you'll know. And then eating whatever you want can still be scary, but you know it's what you got to do because you got to step away from the process. And if you think you can still just do a maintenance phase and maybe do some kind of halfway measure, fine. But you got to be real with yourself at some point. And I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, if you do choose to do a diet reset and you think it's going to end with you just being gigantic and obese, that's just not the case. Because remember, you'll come back to healthy eating, no problem. You just need a little break from it. You can undo the damage is easy. In the long term, it's not. It's not. Right? It's like you're having fun with your friends, in the club or something like that, you're dancing, and then you have to pee really bad. And you think, man, as soon as I walk away to pee, the fun's going to be over. And it's like 11:30 and the club's just getting started. You can try to just hold it in and have a really crappy time, or you can realize that if you go to the bathroom, pee, come back, it'll be a fun night after that. And you can just do your thing.
The anxiety.
Totally. And you don't have to just stand around holding your pee, kind of dancing like this. I don't know how to dance anyway, but hypothetically, people dance with more leg movement, I've been told. I don't go to clubs. I don't have any friends. So that's the case. It's one of those things people think, oh my God, you're telling me a month of eating whatever I want in the grand scheme of your healthy and awesome physique that you build over a lifetime? A month is nothing. It's nothing. You think some of these champion Olympians that you see winning events, champion bodybuilders, you ask them, like, has there ever been like a month-long period where you didn't like really train much and eat like whatever you want? They'd be like, yeah, of course. There's nobody that lived a robot life. No one. And because psychological health is that important. As a matter of fact, a champion bodybuilder is now coming back to competition, Kevin Levrone. He actually would take, I'm not recommending this, but he would take half a year off of training and dieting altogether between every single Mr. Olympia, which he placed an average of 3rd place. He would just start training like 4 or 5 months out, and he would be in shape every single time. Is that the best thing for getting leaner and leaner and leaner and bigger and bigger and bigger over time? No way. He came back with more or less the same look every time. But do you think that you're not going to get your abs back or whatever within months, even weeks of restarting dieting? You're kidding yourself. And not only that, not only do you get your abs back, but you're now so much healthier psychologically that now you can go to that next level and display a really ripped physique or incredible times or just be at that body weight that you wanted for so long and be psychologically okay with it. Is it worth a couple of months, maybe 6 months of not super great progress, taking 1 step back to take 16 steps forward?
Yes.
You bet.
Absolutely. So great tip from Dr. Mike Israetel. A lot of us have been in ruts. There are different solutions to get out of them. This is an actual methodology that you can follow to really try and get out of that spot that you're stuck in dieting where you feel like you've plateaued or you're not making any progress or you're just perpetually cutting forever trying to get to the weight that you want to be at. Maybe it's time for you to do something like a diet reset.
Just give it some thought. And if it sounds like a bad thought, you don't need it. If it sounds like an intriguing thought, maybe you do.
Yeah. Very interesting. So we'll be back in a bit with some more tips on the psychology of dieting. Thanks, guys.